Hello, boys and girls. It is finally time to talk about the 3.10 and the changes it brings to the Atlas. So 3DG made a post, like a news post, where they're talking about all the changes, and then because of the feedback, they made a manifesto 2 days after to explain like further their reasons for that. And without actually reading it for you, so the base changes to the Atlas, so let's like ignoring like Zeros and Awakening and Awakening bonus stuff right now. So currently the chance for a master mission to obtain a master mission when you kill a map boss, so complete a map, is 40%, and they are dropping it down to 35. Now you can get it above this, but more about that later. But so the base chance is slightly lower now. They are slightly reshuffling the maps. I don't really know what it's gonna be, but I would expect that we'll get more T16 and more T15s, because right now, if you ignore all unique maps, over half of the maps with fully watchstoned Atlas are T14. And then when it comes to 15s and then 16s, I think there's 20. I think there's 24 T16s, like non-unique ones. So yeah, there's that. So my guess is that they're going to increase the amount of T15s and 16s at the highest amount of watchstones in each region. But we'll see. They're making improvements to Temple of Atzodol. We don't know anything about them yet, so we'll just have to wait and see. Could be that they are not even improvements. I'll come into in a second. And then they're making corrupted zones in maps. Always been rare, and now they can also drop maps, and this is pretty nice. And now we're going past the normal, just the base Atlas changes, and then the more specific things. So they're changing the Conqueror. I guess that it's not about the serious progress, but more about the Conqueror progress. So that you can see, like when you have the influence in your Atlas, you can tell when the Conqueror influence is going to spawn, which for the most part is a really good thing. So what we know is that it's either going to take 5 maps, 7 maps, or 9 maps total, including the first influence spawn, to actually get to fight the Conqueror. So in the case of, let's say that every single time we have to go through the 9 map cycle for the boss, on average I would expect it to be like 10 or 11 maps per Conqueror, because it's not a guaranteed spawn to get the influence. Now we don't actually know what, like when these are applied, when it's 5, when it's 7 or 9 yet. There's few different options it could be. It could be based on the quest progress. So for example, the watchstones between 0 and 20 could always be at 5, and then so on and so on. I kind of hope that's the case, but we'll just have to wait and see what it's gonna be. But yeah, so we really don't know. It could be random. We don't know. I wouldn't expect it to be random, because there's like these random specific numbers. But yeah, so the initial spawn will have influence, then you will run a map that doesn't have an influence, and then you run a map with influence, and then you run a map again without influence. This would be influence again, and then we would spawn the Conqueror, and we could get to fight the Conqueror. Or if you decide to not kill the Conqueror, it will probably just start over from the beginning. With the 7 map cycle, you would get 1 extra map between the middle and the last spawn. With the 9, you would get another extra again. So you would have influence 3 maps, influence 3 maps, and then influence again. Now, it's amazing that we can see the progress, so people stop complaining about their Atlas being bugged. when they don't spawn the influence because it was random. And we can most likely use Shaper and Elder Scarabs in these no influence spawns to actually run every single map with influence. Obviously, you would have to have the Scarabs for that, but it's really nice because previously, well, like currently, if you use Elder or Shaper Scarab, you could potentially lose out on a spawn here, influence spawn here. And I'm not sure what's gonna happen if you use an Elder or Shaper Scarab on this particular spawn. Maybe nothing happens, maybe we just skip through it, and you can like skip the actual influence spawns. Maybe the Elder and Shaper Scarabs don't actually work in terms of increasing the progress between the no influence and the influence spawns here. We don't really know. I really hope that if you use the Scarabs to spawn Elder and Shaper influence, it will just like literally take the slot. So that could also mean that you can avoid certain influence, like for example Baron influence, if you wanted to, while being able to fight Baron. That's something that would be very interesting to me, but we'll have to wait and see. Zero spawning is gonna be much slower in general, on average, especially if after you obtain the 32 Watchstones, it will always be the 9 map cycle. And we don't actually even know what determines if like the map here, the middle map here, to be triggered for the progression. Do we have to kill the map boss? Is it like 50% of the map? Is it like few packs, like it is with the normal influence spawns? If it's based on the map boss, I would expect people that want to really min-max the speed farming of zeros to set up their Atlas so that they have like a good map for these in-between maps. Or people will just run low-tier maps again. But even when loading low-tier maps, a fast map to the like a short distance from the start to the map boss is faster, right? So the min-maxers will, to some extent, either they buy a bunch of these maps or they will set up their Atlas so that they drop more of those maps. Like for example, Mesa or City Square are really good at this. And now for the thing that you could kind of argue is a downside of the new system, and that is that since it's no longer random and you know when the influence will happen, like, well, the first originally spawning the influence will still be random, but according to them, it's gonna be will spawn randomly but with a high chance. So we don't know what that means. I hope it's like 75% chance or something like that, at least. But we'll see. But because you know that, few people have made points that you might feel pressured to min-max those specific maps, and that would like cause some annoying micromanagement. I personally think that people who already min-max, well, it will change nothing for them, and then people who don't generally min-max their maps for like Jewish now have the opportunity to do so in these maps because they know when the influence is gonna spawn. Because one of the worst things about the current system when it came to trying to choose your maps and get the influence spawn is when the influence didn't spawn. And you were just like, well, I just wasted all of my stuff in, choosing the map. So I think it's overall much better than the current system. But then you might feel that depending on how good sextants you might have on your watchstones, that you need to flip-flop between bad and good watchstones so that you can save the good sextants on these specific maps. But you kind of already do that to some extent, but now you would know when to do it, right? There's no risk, you know when to do it, but you might feel pressure to do that more because you have the information for it. So it's like, okay, I'm just gonna put, you know, bad sextants or no sextants between the no influence maps, and then I move the good sextants when I get the influence. But I don't think that's a big deal, honestly. And then we get to the Awakener level stuff. And an interesting thing is that in the league page, on the Delirium announcement page, they mentioned that they're adding new incentives to reach high awakening levels. And then when we come to the actual changes to the awakening levels, so the awakening level being currently how many regions you have fully watchstoned, and then you get the bonuses that are here. So they get more life, they get effective modifiers, you get a chances to get you know, all kinds of stuff. So the interesting thing here is that what they did is they removed the increased effect of map mods, which increases the quantity, pack size, rarity, and the effect of the mod itself. So it's making the map mods, in most cases, harder. There are cases where it doesn't actually do anything, like no region, but for a lot of cases, it's just making the map mods also like harder. So they are making the effect of awakening level strictly worse than it's in 3.9. So that's a bit of weird that they would call it. It's been extra incentives to me. And then on top of removing this, I guess this is kind of a good thing, is they are making the awakening levels easier to achieve. So yeah, so right now, like I mentioned earlier, the awakening level is based on how many regions you have fully watchstoned. So with fully watchstoned Atlas, you'd be at 8, right? And then if you were to remove one watchstone out of, like, you know, I could do this. Remove one watchstone of these 4, and now my awakening level up would be only 4. Now what they're doing right now with 3.10 is it's the total amount of watchstones. So your awakening level will be set per 4 watchstones that you have socketed in your Atlas. This means that you can have 4 watchstones socketed in 4 different regions, and you'll have awakening level 1. This also means that if you have a total of 28 watchstones anywhere in your Atlas, you would be at 28 divided by 4 equals 7. So right now, in the new 3.10 Atlas, I would actually have awakening level 7. So this is a massive buff to target farming. Like, actually insane. And especially target farming with Atlas, where you have completed most of the maps. Because let's take an example of waterways here. Now they are shuffling the Atlases, and we don't know exactly what maps will be what tiers, etc. But let's just use an example of waterways. Waterways is the only T16 on its region. So what that means is that in the current Atlas, if I were to remove one watchstone out of every single region except Turn's End, there, my only tier 16 would be waterways, and I would drop down to awakening level 1. In the new system, I would actually still be at awakening level 6, because I still have a total of 25. I could actually remove one watchstone from somewhere. Like, I could remove watchstone from there, and now I would like keep obtaining like tier 8 jungle valleys for farming with lower level characters or something like that, because I'm still at 24 total, which is enough for awakening level 6. So I think that overall that's a really good change that will allow people to farm. It allows people to target farm specific maps or regions more, while still having a decently high awakening level. I'm expecting every single region to have at least 3 tier 16s. So in the case of that, you would still probably want to consider not completing all maps if that would allow you to farm your, favorable map more than, like, let's say that there's like a T16 dungeon here. I would absolutely not complete the T16 dungeon so that I would get the waterways instead. But, so yeah, there's that. And then I guess I could show another setup as well. Yeah, I can show you another setup as well. Because, okay, so the example that I just showed is for farming one specific region or one specific map. But that's not gonna be possible for all maps. So if you look at T14s, pretty much half of the maps are T14 here. And let's say that you wanted to farm a T14 Underground Sea. That would mean that you can't complete... But first of all, you can't really run Underground Sea as a T14 while having 4 Watchstones here, because you would... There's 6 adjacent maps. There's Mausoleum, Arid Lake, Maze, Arsenal, Volcano, and Dunes. And all of those are T14. So that alone kills the possibility of farming Underground Sea as a 4 Watchstone setup. However, if you remove a Watchstone, now your Underground Sea is a T11, and there's no 14s here. So by removing a Watchstone, you can run tier 14 Underground Seas. But since we're not dropping Underground Seas, what can we do? Well, you can pick another map, well, or multiple, that depends on you, of course, but if you wanted to maximize the amount of Underground Seas, you would only pick one extra map. So let's say, for example, that you really like Burial Chambers for, I don't know, whatever reason. So what you could do is, you could do not complete any of these highlighted maps here, except the Burial Chambers. So the Burial Chambers would be your only completed map at tier 14 here with 4 Watchstones. So whenever you run the Underground Sea, when a 14 would drop from this region, it would have to be Burial Chambers because others are uncompleted. Now, there's still a bunch of other maps, right, that would drop. So what you could do, so you're running the 14 Underground Sea with 3 Watchstones. You could remove Watchstone from here, and from here, we are still Awakening level 7 now. And now if we refresh this, the amount of 14s just drastically went down. Now, obviously, you could also just remove a Watchstone from here, but there are other T14s here. So you would have to plan your Atlas beforehand a bit to not complete specific maps. So for example, if I were to do that, I would not complete Academy, Wall Pyramid, Academy, Conservatory, Leyline, then these 4, or these 3, or these 3, or these 3. And that way, and obviously these either. That way, whenever I run Underground Sea, the only T14 that can drop, because I can't drop any of these as T14 because they don't exist at that tier with 3 Watchstones, would be Burial Chambers. And then when I run out of Underground Seas, I would simply switch. So now there's no tier 14s here. And the only T14 that we have completed is Underground Sea. And boom, we get that. So that's basically how you can target farm any 2 maps, regardless of their tier, really. Even if it's T14, which is like objectively the worst tier to farm because of how many maps you need to complete. But because the change to the Awakening levels, it's much easier to do, and you are penalized much less than you are right now. And then let's take a look of one more setup where you could actually target farm with Awakening level 8, assuming this particular setup wouldn't change. I mean, there's a few examples of that. So let's take a look at T15 maps. there aren't that many T15s. Now, obviously, you could never just complete these specific maps, and that way you could keep Awakening level 8, right? And the only T15s you would ever complete would be Toxic Sewer and Sepulchre, right? These are in what I want to call is just a closed loop, where they are not connected to another T15. So the only T15 that you can find when farming Toxic Sewer here is a Toxic Sewer or Sepulchre, and vice versa. While running Sepulchre, we're still getting Gardens, but that doesn't matter, because it's not a T15, and it wouldn't downgrade to a T15 if you didn't even have it, because they removed that system in 3.9. There's another example of that, such as Promenade and Overgrown Shrine, because they are just connected with each other, and there's no other T16 here. There's Underground River and Plateau here, the same way. And then if we compare like others, you could potentially, to some degree, do these three, but then again, you are connected to another, and like all of these T16s are connected. So it's not as good in these, but like these two here and these two here. So there is a possibility of Awakening level 8 farming, while only farming the maps that you want, if you set it up correctly. But there is no sign of us getting Cartographer's Seal back, based on the manifesto. In fact, in the manifesto, I'm gonna skip a bit now, they mentioned that they would ideally have a system where Cartographer's Seal where Cartographer's Seal is not needed. We can actually look from here. Ideally, we'd prefer that things were designed in a way where uncompleting maps was not necessary. We want players to earn map completion and bonus objectives and to feel good about having them. Cartographer's Seals work directly against this. So I wouldn't expect us to get it. However, with the system right now, in order to do what I explained here, requires you to never run those maps that would hamper your sustain of those particular maps if you wanted to do that, which is a bit of a feels bad, man, because that means that if you want to do something like that, you have to commit for that and you can't change that, at least if you're playing trade leagues. If you're playing solo self-found, you could throw away all of your progression and start from scratch. If you play in private league, you can migrate that progression and start again. I'm actually planning to start playing on a hardcore private league this league, and I'll probably make a video about my plan there later on. But yeah, so we're in a bit of a pickle there. Then let's go back into talking about the changes. So Awakening bonus completion. So similar to Awakening level, they mentioned that one of our goals is to provide more incentive to complete Awakening bonus objectives. And then, to everyone's surprise, I guess, they removed the increased effect of... they removed the chance for maps to drop a tier higher. So if you have a pretty much fully completed Atlas and fully Awakening bonus completed Atlas, you'll get another 75% chance for a map to drop one tier higher. And that's this here, right, is basically the reason why they ended up making the manifesto. And yeah, I'll talk about that in a second. Other changes they did is they moved the increased effect of map mods from Awakening level to Awakening bonus completion, and the same way it's up to 24%. And then the Awakening bonus completion also increases the chance of obtaining a master mission up to a total of 10%. So instead of the 45% that we have now, if you have I would assume it's going to be like 150 Awakening bonus completion, then you'd have a 45% chance. That's really big. Getting that extra 5% amount of master missions is really big. Master missions are insane. like even though a lot of people don't do them, master missions help a lot with map sustain. Like Zana alone, and then Nico for Sulfide and all that. But overall, these changes to the Awakening bonus completion do nerf the high tier map sustain, but I think it was coming. I think it was pretty easy prediction to make that they're nerfing the high tier map sustain from the Awakening bonus completion. Because currently you can basically sustain T16 by running them white, and then just like 3-1ing all of T14s and 15s to T16s, because you get so much of the maps. But one thing that I don't personally like much is the increased map mod effect that you get from the Awakening bonus completion is permanent. There's no way to undo that. So they kind of like doubled down on the permanency of your actions in the Atlas. One being maps that are completed cannot be uncompleted, and then maps that you complete the Awakening bonus objectives on, where sort of bonus completion on, also stay like that. Which means that you will get a permanent increase to map modifiers that can be increased. And that's another thing that people really didn't like, because that kind of fucks over some builds, like Ignite builds, which was specifically mentioned. But GGG did respond that mods such as monster avoiding elements that completely can break your build are gonna be... where is it? You're completely right that map mod effect isn't always positive for every build. For example, it can ruin Ignite builds, yada yada yada. While map mods are designed to hinder your character, the map mod effect that can sometimes push it over a reasonable limit will make adjustment to those cases. So I would expect the, avoid elements to cap at like 95% or something. Other similar mods that I personally think that should get a bit of... I'm not sure about like removing entirely, but the base nerfed, because people are gonna be getting this a lot. I'd say the majority of people will just not care about not completing maps, and instead, well, they'll just complete all maps, which is totally fine, and they'll end up having a very high ABC, which makes mod like the block less block chance really absurd. Another thing that I personally don't like is the unlucky dodge, and the reason for that is that those are basically, instead of those two are basically not like damage modifiers, but rather a reduction to your life pool in a way. While we don't have a mod that kind of reduces your life pool. So I'm not a huge fan of those two mods personally. Something like reduced flask charges gain is amazing mod, but those two I'm not a big fan of. Even though you can roll over them, but those are also very common mods. And then before anyone makes a comment about no region is not an extremely common mod. And there's much less builds that get completely fucked over by it. For a lot of builds, it's just like a bit of an annoyance, but yeah. And then a bit more about the manifesto. Let me get it here, so my ugly face is not on the way. So they explained why they're nerfing the map drops. So they have a big list of stuff here that increased our map sustain, and I'm totally fine with them nerfing the overall map sustain a bit. But yeah, regardless if you agree or not with them with that decision, I think it's totally justified from their point of view to do it. And then when it comes to target farming, we pretty much got a no answer, because apparently they haven't decided on it yet internally. Not sure. Yeah, we'll see if we hear about that later on. With the only exception that they don't want seals because it goes against the philosophy of progressing Atlas. And I agree with them that completing a map should never be a detriment, ideally. However, we do live in reality right now, and with the current system, it can be a detriment, depending on how you want to play the game. So, yeah. There's a bunch of different ways they could solve this, but right now, and I mean, they do say that they have some things on the test, on the internal testing, and yeah, we'll just have to wait and see. Interesting enough, they will be let known when when they progress, but I'm not expecting to hear anything until they have actually decided on this. But yeah, we'll see. Anything else I wanted to cover here? Oh yeah, so Rory and Neon are gonna be on Bakelast this Sunday, where we will either get answers to some of the questions. There's a lot of questions arise from all of this, or we don't. We'll see on Sunday. I'm gonna leave a comment like on like the timer for it on the comments and on the description. But yeah, it's gonna be an interesting league because now the majority of like the big names are probably a bit more aware of the systems and how the things work, which also means that more of their viewers start to understand and see these. So I'm very curious to see how things end up and if we'll get any changes even mid-league. I'm not expecting that to be the case, but yeah. I'll see you guys later.